My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister. It has been 6 years since then and I just received an email from him. I, 33F, met my ex-husband Dan 40M, almost 15 years ago at a restaurant while celebrating my 18th birthday. He was charming, mature, and made me feel loved and special. For context, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My mom and dad used to fight all the time. My dad would sometimes leave and not come back for months. He died when my sister Abby was 5 years old. My mom was always very fond of Abby, even more so since her birth, which often left me feeling neglected emotionally. While my mom did her best as a parent and provided for me, I always felt like something was missing. When Dan came into my life, I didn't feel that void anymore. He supported me, cared for me, bought me gifts, and took me on long drives. I felt complete when I was with him. After dating for 4 years, we got married. I wanted to start a family right away, but Dan encouraged me to pursue my master's degree and helped me build my career. He wanted us to be in a stable financial position before thinking about having kids. He was everything I thought I could ever want in a partner. After 5 years of marriage, I discovered Dan was cheating on me, with Abby. I found out when Dan claimed he had to go out of town for a week, but he actually stayed in town and booked a hotel room for him and Abby. Their affair had been going on for 6 months behind my back. I was devastated. Abby and I were close growing up. I loved and cared for her deeply. How could she do this to me? When I confronted Dan, he admitted everything. He told me he didn't love me anymore, that I didn't give him enough attention, and that I wasn't the same girl he had fallen in love with. Around the same time, I discovered I was pregnant. Due to the immense stress, I lost the baby. Dan didn't even care enough to visit me at the hospital. He was off enjoying a weekend getaway with my sister. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. Abby was always overly touchy with Dan and I sometimes caught him staring at her. It's still disturbing to me. My mother, as usual, took Abby's side. She told me to make peace with the situation. I felt completely alone. I had lost my child, my husband, and my family. At my lowest point, I even contemplated ending my life. Thankfully, my best friend Tina came to my rescue. She was moving to another state and invited me to come with her. I said yes. By then, I was already divorced and staying in my small town meant constantly running into my ex and my sister. It took me a while to settle into my new life, but I met kind people who helped me heal. A year after moving, I met my now husband, Tony, 32M. I was hesitant and kept my guard up, but Tony proved to be trustworthy and loving. He helped me forget the pain of my past. Tony's family was warm and welcoming. We got married a year ago, and I'm now pregnant with our first child. Yesterday, I received an email from Dan. It brought back all the bad memories. In his email, he said he missed me and had tried to find me but couldn't. He claimed he was miserable with Abby, who didn't care about him the way I did. She had cheated on him 5 times, including with his cousin, and treated him poorly. He wanted us to try again as a couple and rebuild our family. I'm not sure whether to feel pity for him or laugh because the grass he left me for is far from green. Update *, I decided to respond to Dan and be done with it. My email read, Dan, I'm sorry to hear that you're suffering, but there's no way I'd ever be with you again. There was a time when I would have taken you back in a heartbeat, but that girl no longer exists. She died the day I lost our child while you were with my sister. I'm now married to a wonderful man who loves and cherishes me. I'm also pregnant with our first child. I've moved on and started a new chapter in my life with someone I deeply care about. Please don't contact me again. You made your choice. You chose my barely legal sister over me. I don't care if she cheats on you or disrespects you. You don't deserve loyalty or respect. I've left my old life behind and I suggest you do the same. Goodbye. Dan replied within an hour, saying he was stupid to think I would wait for him and that he would always wait for me because, in his words, I'll always be his baby doll. I cringed so hard. I also received emails from my mom and Abby, congratulating me on my pregnancy. Abby said she wanted to be the cool aunt. Their audacity left me in tears. I couldn't believe how easily they brushed aside their betrayal. My husband, Tony, comforted me and reassured me that we're hundreds of miles away from them. He even joked that we'd move countries if needed. He's consulting his lawyer friend to ensure they can't force their way into our lives. I'm so grateful for Tony and the life we're building together. I'm 5 months pregnant, and I refuse to let them stress me anymore. Now story 2. My wife informed me at her sister's wedding she had slept with the best man. The time frame is important here. We have been married for 3 years. We were together as a couple for 2 years before that, so we've been together for about 5 years. 2 weekends ago, her sister got married, and of course my wife was in the wedding party. As you would expect, she spent the 2 weeks prior to the wedding helping her sister get everything ready. No big deal at all. She kept me informed and I knew this was going to happen. She took that Wednesday to Friday off work to help her and in fact stayed with her 3 days. I certainly know her sister, but I barely know the guy who is now my brother-in-law. In fact, I've only met him a few times but he seems nice enough. I show up Saturday morning, a few hours before the ceremony, in hopes of stealing just a few minutes to see her, not wanting to intrude on the day since I know she is busy. But I hadn't seen her since Tuesday. She sees me outside of her parents' house and sends her brother out to tell me that she will come out and see me at the car, which I thought was odd, but whatever. She finally comes out and sits in the seat next to me, gives me a kiss, but instead of acting happy to see me or whatever, she tells me that she has to talk to me and she doesn't want it to ruin her sister's day. She informs me that at the reception, if I still want to go, I might hear some things about the best man in her and she didn't want it to be awkward or weird. I just kinda sat there, stunned. She said that about 4 years ago she had a fling with him and it didn't mean anything. She was aware that, by nature, I'm somewhat jealous and wanted me to know in advance so that if I heard something I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I just kinda sat there. This was not how I thought my morning would go. But I told her I appreciated knowing it and that it certainly wasn't a big deal now. She went back into the house and I went to eat lunch, deciding to meet her at the church. As I'm eating and reading my phone, it dawns on me, she said she had a fling with him 4 years ago and we've been together 5. My first reaction was to blow it off and think that she just told me the wrong time, but the more I thought about it, the more I started to remember. About a year and a half into us being together, she had a phase where she was really sketchy about her behavior, wasn't available when she normally was, and went on 2 weekend camping trips that were with friends from work. Of course, I'm a little knotted up over this, but I know I have a long day ahead of me. I go to the wedding and sit there watching everything. After the wedding they have a line where you walk by and congratulate the bride and groom. The wedding party is standing in line as well. My wife is standing with some other guy, I don't know him at all, but the best man was there. I just went down the line and acted like no big deal. At the reception, it takes forever for them to come because of photos. She finally gets there and sits with me. I decided not to say anything as I didn't want to distract from the day. But instead of just letting it go, she then tells me that each of the groomsmen and bridesmaids are going to dance and that she is going to be dancing with him. I ask why when she was not his partner for the party, and she said that the maid of honor and her partner were actually married and wanted to dance with each other. At this point, I'm a little more than perturbed, but I try not to let it show. Thankfully, I was smart enough to not drink because I freely admit I'm an angry drunk, so I know when not to even partake. She talks to everyone around her and then the dance comes. He comes over and extends his arm and she gets up. I try not to watch, in fact I make it a point not to. She comes back with him in tow and they are joking like the best of friends. She decides that it would be a good idea to introduce us. While I didn't say F off like I wanted to, my greeting to him was probably less than cordial. But it did not deter him from sitting and talking with her for a few minutes. The more they sat and talked and reminisced about old times and places, the madder I got. Eventually I got up and went to the bathroom. When I came back he was gone. She decided to tell me that she thought I was rude, which was not what I was all about hearing at the moment. I told her that this wasn't the time or place to talk about it, but rest assured we would talk later. She sat there and then said that she was going to change clothes. As soon as she got back, she was telling her sister that we were leaving because I had ruined her day, but she didn't want me to ruin her sister's day as well. I told her that I was perfectly capable of not being a bother to her or her sister for the rest of the day and that I did not want to be the cause of any drama, so I would prefer to just stay. She went and changed clothes and then came back all in a huff. Now, understand, I have not said a word to her. I even shook the other guy's hand. I guess I just looked miserable, so that is what she was basing this off of. She was adamant about not staying, and so I said that if she really wanted to go we could go, but if she would rather stay I would be happy to stay. Or, since I came in my own car, I would leave so she could stay. She at first said that we should stay, but then said if I couldn't act any better I should leave. I asked how I was acting and she said it was obvious I was trying to be like a silverback gorilla wanting to fight. I didn't know whether to laugh in her face or be offended. I went back in and sat down while she mingled with the other guests. I talked with her brother for a while but ultimately ended up back at our table talking with her grandma. We leave at the same time and I arrived home just before she did. I was sitting in the living room waiting on her when she came in and did not beat around the bush. I simply asked her to retell me the story about this other guy, and she said it word for word like before. After sitting and looking at her for a time I just said, "Are you sure about the time frame?" And she said she was. I then reminded her that we had been together for 5 years, so this fling was well over a year into our being together. What happened next I can't really put into words. Instead of being flustered or denying it, she simply said, "I know." So I asked her to explain, and she tells me that they worked together and that it was just a physical thing. She felt like we weren't in a great place at the time and that she never had any feelings for him and never had any real intentions of leaving me. She just was having some fun for a few weekends. She said that it was probably a mistake on her part to tell me now, but she didn't want me to get blindsided. I did not take this the way she thought I would, I guess. We had a very large argument that ended when she told me I was being a child about all of this. That we were married and this happened way before that and our life together now has nothing to do with him or that time. Well, 2 things. 1, I adamantly disagree that this has no bearing on us. She cheated on me and doesn't even have the decency to feel guilty about it. 2, I hate being told I am childish when I get upset over something. It pisses me off to no end because that is her way of acting superior to me. I told her I needed time to think and she told me there was nothing to think about. We loved each other and this didn't change anything. That was 2 weeks ago and I still am not over it. She has been trying the past few days to get me to talk to her, but I admit that for whatever reason, I'm not viewing her the same as I did before this. Part of me is like, this is stupid, it happened a few years ago and we are married now and there hasn't been any problems at all. But then part of me is like, I just found out she cheated on me and it hurts like crazy. And what makes it worse is that instead of trying to understand how I feel, she is trying to guilt me into just not even thinking about it. Update 1. It's been about 2 months since everything came to light, and I wanted to share where things stand now. After my wife's emotional breakdown and her parents stepping in, things became both clearer and more complicated. At the core of it, I've been wrestling with the idea of forgiveness, trust, and what it means to move forward, if that's even possible. Since our intense conversations and her breakdown, my wife has been making genuine efforts to rebuild trust. She started therapy on her own and has been attending regularly, which I appreciate. She's also been reading about infidelity in relationships, sharing her insights with me. These aren't grand gestures but small, consistent steps. She's even offered to attend couples therapy, though I haven't decided if I'm ready for that yet. I see she's trying, but the question remains whether it's enough for me. I can't deny that I still love her. But the pain hasn't lessened, it's just changed shape. It's not raw anger anymore, it's more like a persistent ache that flares up during quiet moments. Certain triggers, like seeing photos from her sister's wedding or hearing her talk about work, bring back the feelings of betrayal. I've been talking to a therapist too, and it's helped me start sorting through the mess of emotions. Love, anger, sadness, and confusion. The hardest part is reconciling the person I thought she was with the reality of what happened. I've realized she isn't perfect, but neither am I. That doesn't excuse what she did though. Trust isn't something you can simply decide to restore, it has to be earned. And right now, I'm unsure if it ever can be. We've fallen into a strange rhythm. We still live together, eat dinner, and share our lives, but there's an undeniable distance between us. It's like we're roommates with unresolved history. Intimacy has been sporadic to say the least. Sometimes it feels natural and other times I just can't bring myself to connect with her that way. We've had more open conversations and I've continued asking questions when they come up. I know some people would advise against that, but for me, understanding the full picture is part of processing. She's answered every question honestly, at least I believe she has. Sometimes though, the answers only deepen the wound. The biggest development recently is that I've started seriously considering separation. I've realized that forgiving her doesn't necessarily mean staying together. Forgiveness might just be something I give for my own peace. The fact that I'm still unsure after all this time tells me something significant. Maybe this marriage isn't salvageable. We've talked about separation openly, and to her credit, she hasn't tried to manipulate me into staying. She says she'll respect whatever decision I make but insists that she wants to prove she's worthy of my trust again. She's also adamant that she never stopped loving me, even during her mistakes, but I don't know if I can believe that. If love is supposed to protect, why didn't it protect me? For now, I've decided to take a short trip alone. I need space to think and reflect without her presence or the influence of her family. Maybe some time away will help me figure out what I truly want, to try and rebuild or to move on and start fresh. Regardless of what happens, I know I'll be okay. This experience, as painful as it's been, has forced me to grow in ways I didn't anticipate. And if nothing else, it's reminded me of the importance of self-worth. I'll update again when I have clarity. Right now though, I'm taking it one day at a time. Final update. It's been a few months since everything unraveled and I've reached a decision. After a lot of reflection, therapy, and conversations with my wife, I realized that forgiveness doesn't have to mean staying. It became clear that while I still love her, the trust we had is gone, and rebuilding it feels insurmountable. She's been genuine in her efforts to make amends, and I respect her for that. She's taken responsibility, sought help, and given me the space I needed to process. But every time I look at her, I'm reminded of the betrayal. It's not anger anymore, it's a quiet, persistent ache that doesn't seem to fade. I've come to understand that I deserve a relationship where I don't have to carry this kind of weight. We've decided to separate. It was a mutual decision, though the pain of it was palpable for both of us. She told me she'll always regret what she did and hopes I can find happiness again, whether or not it includes her. I told her I wish her the same, and in some strange way I meant it. Walking away wasn't easy, but staying would have been harder. I've learned a lot about myself through this experience, about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of boundaries. As difficult as this chapter was, I'm ready to start a new one, focusing on healing and rediscovering who I am outside of this relationship. Sometimes love isn't enough, and that's okay. Letting go is painful, but it's also a chance to grow. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm heading toward peace. Subscribe for more such videos.